I always start with, you got to have a framework in how you analyze any data or any concept, right? So my first framework that I look at anything with is old foods don't cause new diseases, right? When you look at most of the diseases we have today, they're routinely Neolithic, right? They weren't at the same level that we saw 100 years ago, right? Obviously, we had different problems back then because we didn't have the same level of water sanitation, indoor plumbing, antibiotics, which, for like you get a major cut, you had an infection, you'd have antibiotics, you could die, right? So we have that. That's different. So Neolithic foods cause most diseases, and so when you look at good proteins and animal fats and these kind of things, they've been eaten for as long as you can go back. So those typically aren't going to be the problem, right? It's mostly going to be the processed foods, the excess omega-6, and also, the whole vegan bent. That's something that's not really supported by anthropological data. You look at the works of Weston Price, or you look at people that studied indigenous societies, almost always meat was consumed when it was available. The only societies that typically didn't consume meat were societies that didn't have access to it. And if you look at the works of Weston Price, when meat was accessible, it was typically consumed. It wasn't like, oh, let's just not consume it. It's typically they didn't have access to it. And when they did, they ate it. And so people that tend to do really good on a non-vegan diet are your ectomorphs. These are people that can handle lots of carbohydrate. It's impossible to do a vegan vegetarian diet for the most part and not be very, very high carbohydrate. And typically, you also got to plug in a lot of protein powders to do it well, whether it's free form amino acids, whether it's collagen or pea protein or rice protein or hemp protein. Most are having to plug in a lot of amino acids to get enough, especially if they're trying to put on muscle and be, on the fit side.
It's hard to be a vegan. It's easy to be a animal-based person, I'll tell you that. There's just a lot of hacking you have to do. So Isabella chimed back in. She was a little bit behind on the live stream, so she chimed in here. So here we go. We got some more evidence, guys. I hope you're having as much fun as we are, because this is like a, on the fly functional medicine workup here. So she
Yep.
said, loss of period for 6 months as well. Mood issues like anxiety and racing heart upon waking, irritability, which is what I was thinking, some kind of hormone stuff. I'm a bit behind, but wanted to input that. So there we
Well, the
go.
problem with a lot of those symptoms, it requires me having to ask a very important question. I won't ask that question, but we'll just say the meat of that question begins with the letter V. And we'll just
Oh,
let people linger on that. And Isabel, if you want to reach out, feel free. I think we've chatted in the past, so feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you.
yeah. That's a very, very good point and would make perfect sense, especially with the
Hmm.
timeline here. I would be wanting to look at some blood work. Actually, I had a woman last week, 33 years old, loss of period, other issues. We ran her blood, elevated D dimer. That
Hmm.
indicates breakdown of clotting. So we'll leave it at that for today. But mid
And
30s women should not be having elevated D dimer.
yeah, and we're speaking kind of like we are in a very discreet type of manner because we want to keep this information flowing to you. Okay, so people out there, hopefully you mostly get that, and you want to continue to see us on the air. That's our goal.